the border fence was one of those things that made people feel good, but the reality is it gave them a false sense of security that is now playing out in the Arizona law that just passed.
Mm-hmm.
This issue is like an iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And the 15% of the iceberg above the surface of the water is what everybody's paying attention to. It's the border wall, it's the amnesty, it's what part of illegal do you not understand.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's the part of the iceberg that's below the surface of the water that's always causes the damage. It's what sank the Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
the below the water. So what's below the water, the part of the iceberg that's below the water that's going to sink our economy or has the potential to sink our economy is made up of two issues. The first is our demographic changes that are primarily made up in the baby boomer retirements. Because between now and 2015, we have between 77 and 82 million baby boomers that are going to retire, and there's only 67 people that will enter the workforce behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a difference of 10 to 15 million more people leaving the workforce than entering the workforce. The second issue is a country has to have a fertility rate of 2.1, which means adult females need to have 2.1 children during their lifetime. We're at 2.1, and we're expected to fall below replacement level by 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So just on a simple scale of balancing our workforce, if you have more people leaving than entering the workforce, you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you have fewer people being born than that cannot keep pace just to replace their parents, then you have another mathematical problem. Mm-hmm. So those two combined are what is going to cause massive damage to our economy. There's no better example than Japan, mm-hmm. because unlike the United States, Japan never had a baby boom. Mm-hmm. Post-World War II. And Japan basically does not allow immigrants into their country, for the most part. So what's happened is Japan's economy has imploded, mm-hmm. to the point now where when there's fewer people entering the workforce, many of the corporations leave because there's not a workforce pipeline. Mm. And so now Japan outsources half of their engineering work, and of what gets outsourced, half goes to Vietnam and half goes to India. We've now seen Microsoft build a software development plant in Vancouver, Canada, mm-hmm. because we don't issue enough visas in this country to bring in those software engineers. So Microsoft has most economists believe that Microsoft has a multiplier effect of 4. So for every job Microsoft creates, 4 others are created in the industry to help support that Microsoft job. And so if we shipped out or outsourced 1,500 jobs to Canada, did we also outsource another 6,000 jobs, mm-hmm. Up into Canada? Meanwhile, you have California ag producers that are now growing their produce in Mexico. Because if labor won't come to business, then business will go to where the labor is, and there's plenty of labor in Mexico. There's a reason that we have so many people that enter the country illegally, and that's because we have a need for that labor for about 500,000 people per year, even on low-skilled labor, but yet we only give 5,000 visas. Mm-hmm. People are going to come illegally. It would make more sense if you rerouted the traffic through the ports of entry and did the background check on people, and if they're not a criminal, then let them in. Mm-hmm. If there's a job for them and we need their labor, then great. If they are a criminal, then send them back and tell them they can't come in. That Border Patrol agents who are on the front lines, literally the guys with the binoculars the men and women who are standing along the Rio Grande with their binoculars, watching for people who are trying to cross, they will all tell you the same thing, that they're worried about the criminals, they're worried about the terrorists, they're worried about the bad guys. So they want you to get the gardeners and the landscapers and the housekeepers and all the other people who enter this country illegally. They want you to get them out of the way. Send them over there to the legal ports of entry. Get them out of my way. Because that way, anybody who is swimming across the Rio Grande, I know is a bad person. Because if they had an opportunity to go to the port of entry and get a legal piece of paper that allowed them to be in the United States, then no good person would be swimming the Rio Grande. And I also just spoke to Leadership Texas. It's a group of 125 very high-level, influential women that are doctors and engineers and attorneys and healthcare people that work in the healthcare field, the high-tech field. And many of them came up to me afterwards and said, I've never seen this issue from this perspective before. Because they too get used to, as most people do, it's easy to get sucked into the emotional debate. You know, the rhetoric has gone down a little bit because Lou Dobbs is no longer on the air. He was definitely fanning the flames for a long time. But we still have a long way to go. But traditionally, you know, I spoke in what year was it? I've lost track of time. But I spoke at the Democratic Convention that was here in Austin a couple years ago. And I had union people who thought that immigrants stole their jobs, and then afterwards came up to me and said, you know, wow, I'm looking at this from a completely different perspective now. And then I approached both the Texas Democratic Party and the Texas Republican Party, and I told them that I wanted to see if there was an opportunity for me to speak about this issue, because this issue is not a partisan issue. And the solutions are not partisan either. If you believe in doing things based on the facts, then allow the facts to lead you to the solution.